No, but really, we're here to talk about academic perspectives on peaceful and inclusive societies in Southeast Asia. And by the way, I'm Gatdula. I'm the Dean of the Law School of the University of Asia and the Pacific. And it's great to be back here again upon the invitation of the Brigham University. I first met Cole Durham and, of course, Brent Schaffer in the 2013 Law and Religion Conference there. So it's one of my fondest memories, particularly in the practice of law. And so I was very glad that Heidi took the opportunity to again invite me here. It's also a great opportunity to meet again Hannah Smith, one of my heroes in the law and religion field. And so anyway, here we go. So the peaceful and inclusive societies are characterized by strong institutions, respect for human rights, and equitable economic distribution. But this presupposes a strong and impartial legal system, applying equally to all, regardless of social status, but also underlying the need for a strong application of rights, including the freedom of religion, particularly the right to proselytize and to subvert the freedom of expression, allowing for diverse perspectives and critical thinking, important for informed individual decision-making. Now, the speakers that we have here will be giving their individual perspectives on how to have inclusive societies in Southeast Asia. I shall be introducing them now. The first is Pablito Baybado, Dr. Pablito Baybado, or Bong, as I call him. Is a theology professor and program lead of the Graduate School of Theology program, a professor of theology at the Institute of Religion, and a researcher at the Center for Theology, Religious Studies, and Ethics at the University of Santo Tomas. He is the Executive Secretary of the FABC Office of Education and Faith Formation and the Associate Secretary General of Religions for Peace Asia. Dr. Hurriyah is a scholar of religion and politics in Indonesia, and I always find it cool that she has one name, with over 20 years of experience in academic and applied research. She is the chair of the Indonesian Scholar Network on Freedom of Religion or Beliefs, SFORB, in addition to her roles as assistant professor at the Department of Political Science and director of the Center for Political Studies at Universitas Indonesia. Her research interests include Islam, politics, gender issues, human rights, civic space and religious freedom, and religious minorities. She will speak on justice, equality, and agnostic pluralism, Indonesia's journey toward inclusive societies. Next will be Thao Nghiem, a PhD researcher in history and religious studies at the University of Groningen, the Netherlands. Before his doctoral studies, Thao trained in political science at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, and studied religion and public life at Yale University. He previously held a teaching position at Vietnam National University in Ho Chi Minh City, and his current research focuses on the social history of political secularism in post-colonial Vietnam, with particular emphasis on law and religion, examining how the boundaries of religion were shaped, contested, and negotiated between different levels of state and society. After that will be Professor Dr. Inayah Rohmaniyah, is a senior lecturer of the Graduate Program of Islamic Theology and Philosophy, Faculty of Usuluddin and Islamic Thought, UIN Sunam Kalija Yogyakarta. She was appointed as the Dean of the Faculty of Usuluddin and Islamic Thought, and currently the Director of Lampu Merapi Center for the Study of Islam and Tolerance. She will talk on successful models for inclusive societies in Indonesia. Last but not least, and a welcome addition to the lineup, is Knox Thames. He's an international human rights lawyer, an advocate who served for 20 years in the US government across multiple administrations, most recently in the Obama and Trump administrations as the State Department's Special Envoy for Religious Minorities in the Middle East and South Central Asia. He is currently a Senior Fellow and Director of the Program on Global Faith and Inclusive Societies, Pepperdine University. He will speak on his research on how sacred sites can promote pluralism. And so with that, I turn over to Bong for his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to join this conference. I would like to make a confession that I would prefer that my dean would be speaking in behalf of me, because I feel like he is the best one to talk about the discussion on religious freedom and human rights. I also am grateful to him for somehow accompanying me as I go through the ordeal of presenting my paper beside him, and thank you for the support, Dean. My presentation is on synodality as an approach towards a peaceful and inclusive Southeast or societies in Southeast Asia. As a minority religion in Asia, except the Philippines and the Timor-Leste, Catholic Christians in Southeast Asia must navigate the need for integration while keeping and promoting their identity in a culturally diverse and politically volatile environment. We know that the relation of the state and majority religion tends to exacerbate the difficult integration or intensifies the isolation of the minority religion, while the minority religion tends to foment among its members distrust against the majority and the state. Since the start of our conference, we have been talking about the issues and challenges of religious pluralism, human dignity and human rights and religious freedom, and I do not intend to repeat and list them on my presentation. But in that context, where we have Christians as minorities in Asia and in Southeast Asia, based on the theology of synodality of the late Pope Francis, when I wrote this, there was no late yet, but now that I'm presenting it, we say late Pope Francis, I would like to explore the opportunities and pathways of how the churches in Southeast Asia integrates themselves in the communities amidst these irritations and complications. Under the pontificate of the late Pope Francis, synodality defines the ongoing renewal of the Catholic Church worldwide. In fact, if there is a term that would be synonymous to his pontificate, it should be synodality. The contextual articulation of that of synodality in Southeast Asia or in Asia in general is the FABC or Federation of Asian Bishops Bangkok document. The FABC celebrated its 50th founding anniversary in 2022 by holding a general conference to review the past and chart the future of the churches in Asia. The 3-week-long listening, dialogue, and discernment process of around 250 bishops and cardinals from all over Asia have summarized their own statement or final statement entitled Journeying Together as Peoples of Asia, and they went a different way. The FABC Bangkok document is the blueprint of the renewal and integration of the churches in Southeast Asia and in Asia in general. In a sense, if you want to understand what would be the positioning, the directions, and the manner by which the churches in Asia would integrate itself, then you have to read and to know the Bangkok document. According to the Bangkok document, Asia is the continent of great religious traditions and multicultural peoples who share in the common quest for peace, justice, and harmony. Drawing on the gospel, the Catholic Church shares in this common quest. As a minority in Asia, the churches share the joys and sufferings of our peoples. United with all social forces, organizations, civil society, and all people of goodwill, we contribute our efforts to move from the present socio-economic, political life situation to a world in which the dignity and rights of all are promoted and respected. End of quote. As a minority religion in Asia, except again the Philippines and Timor-Leste, the approach of journeying together with the peoples of Southeast Asia is definitely a departure from the historical missiological approach of conversion to the Christian faith. The Bangkok document challenges the churches to give concrete expressions to its commitment of being, and I quote, which is the main point of the Bangkok document, becoming bridge builders and bridges, instruments of dialogue and reconciliation in Asia. This approach is calling for the churches for an intense self-assessment to improve its relations with its neighbors' religions through sincere and genuine dialogue. The interfacing of synodality and dialogue, which is clearly expressed as the nature of the life of the churches in Asia, has its foundation in the Second Vatican Council's landmark document, Nostra Aetate, which says, and I quote, "The Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in these religions. She regards with sincere reverence those ways of conduct and of life, those precepts and teachings which, though differing in many aspects from the ones she holds and sets forth, nonetheless often reflect a ray of the truth, capital T, which enlightens all men." End of quote. During his recent visit to Singapore, the late Pope Francis has become viral on social media because of his pronouncement during his dialogue with the youth at the Catholic Junior College saying, and I quote, "All religions are pathways to God," end of quote. While this initially created problematic in many of the theological circles, the statement lends a fresh expression of what the Church has been teaching and promoting all along since Nostra Aetate. It appears that Pope Francis' insistence for synodality as dialogue with and journeying together with the peoples of Asia is fundamentally grounded on the principle that there is only one God and that all religions, including Catholic religion, are various roads that will lead us to God. Dialogue as an expression of synodality provides therefore a mechanism of relationship that will lead to mutual coexistence, social harmony, and peace. This is echoed in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, where Pope Francis emphasized that, and I quote, "Religions based on the respect for its human person as creature, called to be a child of God, contribute significantly to building fraternity and defending justice and society." End of quote. An earlier document which accounts for the joint statement of Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Al-Tayyib in Abu Dhabi, manifests how synodality and interreligious dialogue converge in the Church's mission of promoting fraternity between and among all religions. And I quote, "We declare that religions must never incite war, hateful attitudes, and extremism, nor must they incite violence or the shedding of blood," end of quote. Another symbol of expressing the need for joining together to promote peaceful coexistence is the Tunnel of Peace in Jakarta, Indonesia, which has been cited many times this morning, which literally is the tunnel that connects the Our Lady of Assumption Cathedral of the Catholic Church and the Istiqlal Mosque, the largest mosque in Southeast Asia. Also known as the Tunnel of Friendship, it has become the symbol of the growing need for collaboration and cooperation between Muslims and Christians in combating discrimination, religious extremism, and other forms of conflict and violence. According to the Istiqlal Joint Declaration, it says, "The values shared by our religious traditions, which we should be effectively promoted in order to defeat the culture of violence and indifference afflicting our world. Indeed, religious values should be directed towards promoting a culture of respect, dignity, compassion, reconciliation, and fraternal solidarity in order to overcome both dehumanization and environmental destruction." Thus, the synodal process calls on communities of neighbor religions to increase interaction and encounter with the end in view of achieving mutual respect and how such approach can provide new ways of understanding and doing ecumenical and interreligious dialogue. Synodality, therefore, is a key element of interreligious dialogue because it requires all to be treated and heard equally in arriving at a consensus for collaboration and cooperation. With these dynamics of synodality enhancing interreligious dialogue, synodality as a framework becomes what Catherine Cornell would argue on IRD as a peace-building mechanism. The most important concern for any dialogue is the consensus on common good, both as a foundation and dynamics of attaining common goal and shared vision. Thus, synodality expressed through dialogue is the way to build peace. It is because the dynamics of dialogue enables parties to work together to address common social concerns such as injustice and environmental problems. Synodality, therefore, as a pathway of doing interreligious dialogue, can provide the mechanism of fostering friendship and fraternity among humanity for the care of the environment. It is precisely because synodality highlights the communal journey. Now, nobody should be left behind. Everyone should be listened to as the process of achieving shared vision, which is enacted through shared responsibility and cooperation. In conclusion, let me quote again the late Pope Francis during his general audience in September 2024, when he said, and I quote, "Peace is born when we listen not only to God, but to each other." Southeast Asia, with its diversity, shows us the way of synodality in action. End of quote. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Baybado. So the discussion on synodality with its emphasis on consensus and underlined by the idea that all religions lead to God. We move on now to the idea of agonistic pluralism, and for that, I defer to Dr. Hurriyah.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
You have to.
Okay, I have to. Okay. Aloha. Aloha. Just to cheer up the forum. I know it's a hard time after lunch. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to be here representing not only the Indonesian Scholar Network on freedom of religion or beliefs, but also a nation that embodies the very essence of diversity. Indonesia, a sprawling archipelago of over 17,000 islands, 1,300 ethnic groups, and 700 languages, has long been a living laboratory for the pursuit of unity amid differences. Our national motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, or what we call unity in diversity, is more than a slogan. It is a testament to a centuries of old ethos of coexistence, forged through Hindu and Buddhist empires, Islamic sultanates, Dutch colonialism, and the tumultuous birth of a modern republic. Yet this motto is not a declaration of perfection. Rather, it is a challenge. How do we transform the ideal of unity into a reality of justice and equality for all? Today, I will explore Indonesia's distinctive approach to this question through three lenses. The first one is about the historical legacy of agonistic pluralism in shaping state policies. And then I will touch up on the vibrant role of civil society in bridging gaps left by the state. And last but not least, I will be talking about the need for synergy between grassroots innovations and systemic reforms. Let us begin by understanding the political landscape that has defined Indonesia's journey. Indonesia's history exemplifies Chantal Mouvet's agonistic pluralism, where democracy thrives not on consensus but through ongoing contestation and negotiation among competing worldviews. This pluralism has been evident in the coexistence of secular nationalism, political Islam, and diverse ethnic, cultural, and religious identities. Understanding this legacy is key to grasping how Indonesia, one of the most diverse democracies in the world, has navigated identity, inclusion, and citizenship challenges. Our foundational ideology, Pancasila, represents an agonistic center where adversaries engage in democratic struggle within agreed parameters. Its strategic ambiguity allows competing visions, Islamic, secular, and socialist, to coexist, but also created a managed pluralism that privileged certain identities over others. And this paradox, where pluralism was both protected and policed, intensified during Suharto's New Order, which subordinated pluralism to national unity and enforced conformity. The post-1998 Reformasi period revived agonistic pluralism, allowing more civil society engagement, but revealing the fragility of inclusive citizenship in a system where rights are often informal, relational, and unequally distributed. While Indonesia's state approach to pluralism has often been top-down and normative, emphasizing national unity through managed diversity, its civil society has responded with bottom-up innovation, moral leadership, and relational outreach. In the face of institutional blind spots, uneven policy implementation, and persistent discrimination, Indonesian civil society has emerged as a vital force in sustaining pluralism and inclusive citizenship. These efforts are not merely supplementary, they are transformative, redefining what coexistence means in everyday life. And let me share other three examples, because on the previous panel, my fellow Indonesians already discussed about how civil society play an active role in promoting pluralism. The three examples that I will give to you this afternoon is, the first is about the leadership of Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah as civil Islam. These two largest Islamic organizations exemplify what Robert Hefner termed as civil Islam, a tradition that integrates Islamic faith with democratic values, religious pluralism, and also civic responsibility. With over 100 million combined members, their influence is substantial in safeguarding diversity and promoting inclusion in Indonesia. NU's Islam Nusantara offers a culturally rooted theological response to rising intolerance, drawing on pesantren traditions and Sufism to promote religious harmony. This inclusive vision has led to cross-faith collaboration on various issues, including radicalism, pluralism, and also state-supported efforts like the Religious Moderation Program and counter-extremism campaign via pesantren and state Islamic university networks. While Muhammadiyah, more modernist in orientation, advanced pluralism through its expansive network of schools, hospitals, and humanitarian programs that serve all faiths. Its ethos of charity for all is reflected in aid to marginalized groups, including Shia Muslim and Rohingya refugees, reinforcing a model of faith-based humanitarianism beyond sectarian lines. Together, I see that NU and Muhammadiyah serve as the institutional backbone of moderate Islam in Indonesia, bridging Islamic values with democratic pluralism and countering exclusivist religious narratives in both society and the state. The second one, I want to talk about the vibrancy of interfaith coalitions and grassroots reconciliation. As my fellow Indonesian already mentioned this morning, Indonesia's history of interreligious conflict, notably in the early 2000 sectarian violence in Ambon and Poso, revealed the fragility of social cohesion. But it also triggered a powerful civil society response. Religious organizations, local customary leaders, women's groups, and also youth activists worked together to heal fractured communities, not through top-down security measures, but by rebuilding relationships on the ground. These initiatives recognize that peace is more than the absence of violence. It requires relational justice, fairness into the fabric of everyday life. Nationally, NGOs, academics, and interfaith organizations have played a vital role in advancing religious freedom and interfaith dialogue through advocacy, legal aid, and also policy research, they have pushed for stronger anti-discrimination laws, better protection for religious minorities, and also an improved framework for religious freedom in Indonesia. Of course, these efforts challenge both state complacency and societal prejudice, carving out civic space where pluralism is not only tolerated but actively nurtured. In response to Indonesia's conservative shift within the past decade, activists, religious minorities, and also advocacy groups have turned to social media to expose discrimination, amplify marginalized voices, and rally support for inclusion. Hashtag, viral campaigns, and also petitions have spotlighted issues overlooked by mainstream politics. Some platforms and civil society group initiatives also promote interfaith solidarity and civic empathy through online education and also storytelling, helping counter intolerant narratives in social media and keep the digital space open, diverse, and inclusive. What unites these diverse civil society initiatives, whether through religious outreach, grassroots reconciliation, or digital advocacy, is their insistence on creating inclusivity through life experience rather than waiting for state permissions. In contexts where the state has prioritized order over justice or has failed to act impartially, civil society actors have filled the void. Their work does not merely supplement state policy, it often refines it from below. Indonesia's pluralism then survives not because of state's uniformity, but because of societal creativity. It is civil society that ensures pluralism in Indonesia is not only a constitutional ideal, but a social reality experience in classrooms, clinics, houses of worships, rice fields, and social media feeds. In doing so, these actors keep the spirit of agonistic pluralism alive, demonstrating that democratic coexistence is not built on sameness, but on the constant, courageous effort to live together amid differences. Yet civil society cannot act alone. The state remains as the primary guarantor of rights, and here, Indonesia's record is mixed. On paper, progress has been made with laws like the 2008 Anti-Discrimination Law and the 2014 Village Law, which aim to reduce bias and empower local governance. But yet, enforcement remains inconsistent. For example, we can take the case of GKI Yasmin Church in Bogor, where despite Supreme Court rulings supporting its right to worship, local authorities have prevented access to the building for over a decade. And similarly, while students of all faiths learn about their own religion, the education system in Indonesia often perpetuates stereotypes, with textbooks depicting minority religions as foreign or deviant, or even heretics. In contrast, some civil society initiatives offer reading materials promoting interfaith friendship and indigenous heroes. So these examples expose a gap between the state's commitment to inclusivity and its failure to address structural inequalities, often reducing inclusivity to symbolic gesture rather than real change. So how then can countries like Indonesia move forward? Let me propose 3 pathways. The first is formalized state-civil society collaboration. In my opinion, to strengthen religious freedom and pluralism in Indonesia, it is essential to formalize collaboration between the state, CSOs, academics, and interfaith coalitions. Organizations like NU and Muhammadiyah, for example, possess unmatched grassroots reach because they have 100 million combined members. Imagine a national task force where they co-design policies with ministries. For example, revising the blasphemy law to protect rather than punish diversity. Academics can contribute research and educational initiative, while interfaith coalitions can also promote dialogue and conflict mediation. So this inclusive approach will ensure that laws and policies reflect the needs of all religious communities in Indonesia. The second thing that I would like to propose is to prioritize local wisdom by integrating practices like musyawarah, or what we call consensus-building dialogues, into national policy making. Local communities across Indonesia have long used musyawarah to resolve disputes. And this indigenous mechanism, rooted in Indonesia's pluralistic culture, offer a valuable model for creating inclusive policies that resonate with local realities. And the third one, many countries can learn from Indonesia's agonistic pluralism. The Rohingya crisis reminds us that suppressing difference breeds violence. ASEAN's non-interference principle must evolve to support regional mechanism for protecting minorities, inspired by Indonesia's civil society model. So, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia's journey shows that justice in diverse societies is a choice, not a given. It is built through the daily efforts of activists, the courage of minorities demanding dignity, and the humility of states that listen. What's at stake today is not just protecting minority rights, but defining coexistence in a plural society. Indonesia teaches us that pluralism is an ongoing struggle, not a finished achievement. The legacy of agonistic pluralism shapes both the opportunities and limitation of citizenship. And this contested space, if navigated with respect, can fuel democratic vitality. In the end, our national poet, Khairil Anwar, once wrote, "Aku ingin hidup 1000 tahun lagi. I want to live for another 1,000 years." He wrote that not out of fear of death, but out of love for the struggle. And today, the struggle continues. It is the struggle to ensure that Bhinneka Tunggal Ika is not a mantra of the past, but a promise to the future. Indonesia, a country where diversity is not a division, and where every voice finds its place in the chorus of human dignity. Terima kasih. Thank you very much. Mahalo nui loa.
Thank you, Dr. Hurriyah. Again, interesting discussion here, but this time from a different perspective from Dr. Baybado. So rather than consensus here, we're probably looking at the ideas of didactic discussions for purposes of religious pluralism. Perhaps we can flesh out the idea later on during the Q&A. But for now, we go to Thao for his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good afternoon, everyone. Aloha. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts today. I want to especially extend my gratitude to BYU, the ICARS. Thank you, Hannah, for this invite. And as well, thank you, Professor Cole and Professor Brett, for your guidance and commitment to enhancing the freedom of religions and belief in Vietnam over all these years. It's a privilege, actually, to be among those dedicated to enhancing formed and building more just, inclusive societies. Your work is vital in shaping a peaceful and inclusive future where every person is respected and empowered to thrive. In this spirit, I'd like to reflect on the concept of human dignities in Vietnam. It's relevant to religious freedom and its broader implications for human rights. The ideas of human dignities hold a powerful resonance in Vietnam's modern history. To explore this, as a student of history, I turned to two influential Vietnamese thinkers and revolutionaries, Nguyễn An Ninh and Ho Chi Minh, both of whom wrote under the constraint of French colonial rules. Their reflections on dignity carry a distinct urgency and defiance. The first man, Nguyễn An Ninh, he was born in Saigon to an anti-colonial family. Ninh was immersed early in both Vietnamese and French intellectual traditions. After studying law at the Sorbonne University and travels across Europe, he returned to Vietnam in 1923. Shortly after, he delivered his landmark speech, Aspiration of the Enemy's Youth, which became a call to actions for young Vietnamese. In that speech, Ninh challenged the youth to cultivate self-respect and inner strength, arguing that dignity must be self-generated, not inherited from traditions or imposed from the outside. He criticized a passive deference to Confucian authority and urged a cultural and moral renewal for Vietnamese people, a break from borrowed traditions in favor of a proud, self-defined national identity. In this speech, he wrote, "Today's youth can only count on itself to rise to the level in which man, conscious of his own strength, begin to be conscious of his dignity. It is to show that the youth is through this heartening struggle to obtain knowledge, to preserve his own pride and dignity, only continues to be met with unexpected and very discouragement imposed by stronger forces." For Nghiem, human dignity was not just personal. Dignity was national. He believed that youth has a duty to redeem Vietnam colonial shame through self-remaking. Only through the transformation of individuals could society itself be transformed. In another quote, he said, "The sum of the values of individuals makes the values of the group. The social environment is only worth what the individuals within it are worth. You want to live, and you know that to live is to act. You want freedom. Above all, you want justice. But you must be prepared to create it." In his vision, personal freedom and collective liberations were inseparable. Dignities began with the individual, but it found itself the fullest expressions in the shaping of a free and just society. The second man probably is more known to you. Ho Chi Minh is born Nguyễn Sinh Cung, embodies many identities throughout his life. His father is a Confucian scholar and Mandarin, shaped Ho's early outlook. In 1911, Ho left Vietnam aboard a French ship and would not return for 30 years. In 1919, he famously submitted the list of claims of enemy's people to the Paris Peace Conference, demanding rights of the Vietnamese under colonial rules. By 1920, he joined a faction of the French Socialist Party that allied with the Third International, becoming a founding member of the French Communist Party. For Ho, national independence and communism were twin sources of dignities and rehumanization. His vision was deeply moral. He believed that lasting political and economic change depending on personal transformation. In his words, he said, "If you want to make a revolution, you must first revolutionize your character." Drawing from both Marxist and Confucian traditions, Ho emphasized moral self-cultivation as the foundation for collective liberation. Revolutionary dignity was not abstract. It was built through daily acts of self-discipline, rectification, and ideological commitment. This vision of dignity focused on social responsibility over personal autonomy. In 1925, from a letter from Gwangju, Ho challenged Vietnamese revolutionaries to stop blaming external forces and instead to ask, "What do you expect? Do you expect them to give us the liberty to do anything, to use all means to drive them out? Do you expect them to take no action to prevent us from attacking their own interest instead of blaming others? I think it is more reasonable to blame ourselves." He contrasted Vietnam's lack of political organization with countries like India and Egypt, urging the Vietnamese to develop grassroots movement rooted in national love and discipline. For Ho Chi Minh, individual dignity was inseparable from national dignity. Both had to be earned through action, self-mastery, and political struggle. Both Nguyễn An Ninh and Ho Chi Minh understood dignity not as an abstract individual right, but as something deeply tied to the nation, a collective property, rooted in the responsibilities its people take on. In their view, dignity had to be asserted, not awaited, especially in the face of colonial powers that refused to recognize it. This sharply contrasts with the conventional liberal view of human dignity as inherent in every individual, as the foundations of rights, as something that depends on social or legal recognition. But in the colonial context, the conventional view proved insufficient. Simply knowing that dignity is inherent didn't ease the pain of watching one's people degraded, or lessen the frustration of repeatedly demanding recognition from those who continuously refuse to give it. Their question was not just, what are our rights, but how long must we wait for them to be acknowledged? So these Vietnamese thinkers redefined dignities in two key ways. First, dignities belongs to the nations, not just the individuals, and it is also rooted in the duties of the people, especially the duty of self-assertion and national determination. This framing of dignity as something to be earned through national effort continues to shape public discourse in Vietnam today. We will now look at how this rhetoric is echoed in the contemporary legal and political landscape, especially in discussions around religious freedom. In contemporary Vietnam, human dignities and religious freedom exist within a legal framework shaped by a collectivist worldview. While the 2013 Constitution affirmed freedom of belief and religions in Article 24, it does so with key caveat, subject to limit for reasons such as national unity, public order, and adherence to 5 customs and traditions. Importantly, rights in Vietnam are consistently tied to duties to the state and society. Article 24 states that rights must be exercised in accordance with the Constitution and law. Article 24 includes a critical clause. No one may violate freedom of belief and religion or take advantage of belief and religion to break the law. This reflects a subordination of individual freedoms to the collective interest, with the state as the arbiter of permissible expressions. Here, dignity is not framed as inherent or inalienable, but as in liberal democracies, but rather as something that must ally with state-defined responsibilities and social harmony. Under Vietnam law on religion and belief in 2016, religious groups are required to register their activities and gain state approval, placing the state in the position of deciding what qualifies as serving the public interest. While some scholars acknowledge that the 2016 law makes a large step forward from the more restrictive 2004 ordinance, mainly by replacing the approval system with a notification system, the practical impact remains limited. Religious organizations may now only need to register or notify or submit proposals, but these procedural changes do not remove state control of religious activity. The Vietnamese Episcopal Conference had noted that despite the sober language, the fundamental dynamics remained intact. The law still operates under a request grant mechanism, where religious freedom is treated not as an inherent right, but as a regulated privilege. The state retains full authority to permit or deny religious activity. This framework suggests that freedom of religions and belief in Vietnam is state-mediated, not self-asserted. It reflects a broader legal culture in which dignities and rights are seen as granted by the collective, not inherently held by individuals. In Vietnam, religion is tolerated only insofar as it is aligned with the goals of building socialism. Religious expression is not treated as an individual right, but rather as a collective good, subject to state regulation and oversight. The Vietnamese state promotes particular vision of religion, one that supports national unities and serves political objectives. These visions embed civil loyalty and patriotism within religious liberty, blurring the lines between being religious, being patriotic, and being loyal to the party. Expressions like a good believer is also a good citizen, or to live the gospels in the heart of the nation, illustrate how religious faith is expected to function within the nationalist and socialist framework. This discourse constructs religion as a contributor to state-defined goals, nation building, economic development, national defense, and social harmony. Religion's legitimacy is thus tied to its social relevance and utility, measured by community service, charity work, and alignment with state narrative. In this framing, religious groups are expected to, quote-unquote, insert faith into life, or gắn đạo với đời, particularly in ways that reinforce great national unity. Legal and discursive boundaries are shaped by this logic. Freedom of religion is not framed as a fundamental right, but as a conditional freedom, one that must contribute to the nation or risk being seen as a destabilizing force. The state's frequent invocation of its revolutionary past further entrenches this position. Religious actors are implicitly reminded that they are inheritors of a hard-won independence and thus bear the duty to defend it. This simplifies history into the binaries of the Vietnamese people versus a foreign aggression, omitting the internal conflict and complexity of the past. By positioning itself as a guardian of national unity, the state legitimized its control over religions and suppressed its dissenting or underlying expression of faith. This reflects a core tension. While individual dignity supports the right to believe and worship freely, the state collectivist logic prioritizes ideological conformities and national cohesion over personal conviction. In this presentation, I have explored how the Vietnamese Party state has constructed a hegemonic framework for freedom of religion and belief in Vietnam, subordinating it to state-centric ideals of national unity, security, and international legitimacy. While this approach was effective in the past, once gathered support and solidarity during the wars of resistance and times of crisis, its continued reliance on non-binaries such as the nations versus hostile forces or anti-revolutionary forces increasingly failed to reflect the complex pluralistic reality of post-war Vietnamese society. In today's increasingly interconnected and dynamic world, these rigid dualisms, such as the state and religious actor, risk marginalizing minority voices and paradoxically undermining the very unity and harmony the state aspires to uphold. These paradoxes present valuable opportunities to revisit official narrative and reframe instances of religious dissent and contestation. It is within this space that scholar and researcher can play a pivotal role, encouraging dialogue between state and religious community that transcend these simplistic binaries of suppressions versus resistance. The academic community is uniquely positioned to foster a nuanced understanding of religious transformation and its socio-political implication within the secular framework. With this in mind, I would like to offer 3 key points for reflection as basis for future policy recommendation. I think I will only have time for one of them, which is first reframing the discourse to beyond the neo-imperial defense. Vietnam must move beyond the neo-imperial counter-narrative, which too often deflect legitimacy critique of force by framing them as foreign intervention. This defensive posture prevents authentic engagement with the lived reality of diverse religious community. A more productive approach begins by inviting marginalized voices into the conversation. How do different communities envision national unity and their role in it? What models of state-religion interaction and civic participation do they imagine? What would interfaith cooperation and solidarity look like on their terms? In conclusion, a new vision of force in Vietnam requires moving beyond these simplistic binaries and embracing the pluralistic complexities of its people. Collaboration is not only possible, it is necessary. By fostering dialogue, valuing diversity, and deepening partnership, Vietnam can move closer to a truly inclusive model of governance, one in which national unity is strengthened, not threatened by individual dignity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Thao Nghiem. Before we proceed, I'd like to make a correction or atonement. Apparently, I'm the only person who has not yet said aloha, so aloha to everybody. So, mea culpa. Anyway.
Which one is yours?
I now turn to Inayah Rohmaniyah. But before that, thank you very much, Thao, again. I've been listening since yesterday with regard to discussions of human dignity. And it's interesting that Thao gave an actual very specific discussion on the definitions of human dignity, at least from the Vietnamese perspective. Anyway, with that, I turn to Dr. Inayah Rohmaniyah for her discussion on successful models for inclusive societies in Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I sent actually the PowerPoint, but maybe something technical little bit problem. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Aloha everyone. Hopefully you are fine and you're still having, like motivation and eager to hear us, because it's like, well, it's time difference, but for us from Indonesia, it's like still jet lag. Okay. First of all, of course, let me thank God, because, because of God already gives me this wonderful opportunity to see wonderful people like you, to share, to learn from you guys here. And also my sincere thanks to BYU, more particularly Prof. Cole, and Prof. Brad. Thank you so much for inviting me. And my best friend, Pak Matius, we have been working for quite a long time. Thank you so much for bringing me here. I bring myself, but with you. And this moment, actually, I'm going to share with you also about CCRL again. I'm lucky because I guess I'm the last one, the last person who will going to share with you about CCRL. And, many people, my colleagues already share a lot. And I guess many slides of mine already told by them. So I don't know, it's lucky or unlucky, because then maybe I don't have many things to share with you, but hopefully I still have some rooms, some things left to share with you. Okay, if you still remember, Pak Matius already shared with you about the concept and the ingredient he mentioned, CCRL. And Ibu Pak Muzaki, our rector, already told you about the tolerance and the symbols of drink and food, and kind of that as a symbol of tolerance. And Ibu Henrietta already also share with you about the atmosphere and the importance of CCRL, and Pak Farid share with you about moderation. So what I'm going to tell you, okay, I'm going to try to framing this CCRL on the philosophical way of seeing, and trying to see the mechanism, the concept of CRCL working in the field, while finally I can show you why it is successful. And I'll see you, even though I'm sure that you believe about the success of this program, because we have so many participants. And here we go. So I can skip this one because everyone is already giving you like the background. That's good, right? Pancasila also, Pak Farid already mentioned about Pancasila, the home of diversity. I can skip every single slide, hopefully. So I think no one mentioned about this, that about the religion, the composition of religion up to now in 2024, but it's still working now, that Muslim is 87.2, yes, it's majority. And Protestant in Indonesia, we have we call Christianity as Protestant and Catholic. We differentiate those two. And the Protestant is about 6.9%, and Catholic is less, 2.9%, and about 1.7% Hinduism, 0.7% Buddhism, and very, very small, and 0.5% Confucianism and other belief system. And here the portrait of the number of population in Indonesia according to their religion, of course, and Islam is majority. And here, religion and education institution. I'm gonna show you how the religion and in educational institution is very relate each other, and why this CCRL program then becomes very urgent in our society to make a change. And I think earlier speaker also already gave you a background about Farid, about the education that schools in Indonesia, every single school, private and also the state schools, have to conduct religious education as required subject in all class level. And of course, all students learn about religion at their school. Religion subject Islam, this is actually that maybe no one share with you that in general, when we are talking about religion at a school level, means commonly understood as fiqh. It's not the Quran itself directly, but it's a fiqh. Fiqh is literally referring to scholarly interpretation and application of Sharia or Islamic law in practical terms. And this is actually the detailed understanding and application of Sharia derived from ulama. So you can imagine, means fiqh is very contextual, subjective, and ideally changing over the time because the ulama live with their special background, special educational background, life experience, and stuff like that. And here again, the context that religion-based educational institution, the number of Islamic schools are very, very, the number is very high. It's like 87,397, and almost all of them are private. And state madrasa means it's a school, Islamic school. It's different from Middle Eastern term of madrasa. And the ones belongs to state is only 4,000. Here means that religious teaching will depend on the founder or leader's affiliation. Because like mentioned earlier by Hurriyah, that's, there are many Islamic schools in Indonesia. Okay, I'm not going to go to higher education. If you have a question, I will be back there if you still have time. And study of religion at school, this is actually the fact that all schools have a course on religion in their curriculum. All students have to study about religion. Many schools have plural students with different religious background, and even some are internationally standardized. That's good. But the problems is, there is no policy. I think earlier a little bit mentioned about this. No policy or regulation that require the specific educational background for a teacher of religion. This is actually the problem. So mismatch is the major issues in this. Some of these teachers even are coming from like the math. So you're studying math, but then you teach religion. You can imagine. You're studying chemistry, you're studying biology, but then you have to teach religion. So you can imagine how difficult it is. And religion is mostly understood as a fiqh and depends on the teacher's religious tradition or organizational affiliation. And the mainstream, unfortunately, has been conservative. This is according to many research. Conservative and then patriarchal, of course, because actually my concern is on gender and radical issues, Islamic radical issues. But today I have to share something else. And primordial. This is actually the problem. And here we go, the bigger portrait of the teacher and studying religion at school. First, about the culture. The culture of learning is mainly indoctrination of the fiqh, not indoctrination of the principle or philosophical basis of Islam based on the Quran directly or the Prophet tradition, but the indoctrination of the fiqh, not the fundamental principle. And the culture of thinking, many research show that then the culture at the school in terms of religious way of thinking is low order of thinking. Why? Because it's not a critical thinking on religion and religious norms. This means that actually the culture is religion not to be asked, but just to practice, just to follow, something like that. And again, yesterday we talked about the AI, the role of internet, social media, also another problem, because then many students, they rely on internet, not the teachers, right? Mostly because of the teacher also have different generation and with different tradition, and our generation Z have a different way of learning, and in many cases they are not connecting with the teachers. This is happening to my kids actually. And social and theological problems, problem of trust, so students don't trust, okay? They apparently likely listen to their teacher in front of the teacher, but behind the teacher, no. As they are too old, so just open the internet, something like that. So there is also the problem of obedience rather than spirituality. Okay, religion is like that, just follow, don't ask. An irrelevant concept of religious norm, and then intolerance, exclusivism, bullying, sexual harassment, even in education. I guess you heard the bad issues and or news in Indonesia. And this is the research findings confirm what's happening in Indonesia in terms of religious school, or in terms of schools, teaching of religion at school. That survey on religious intolerance involving 2,237 in how many? In about 900 cities. Okay. Simply, it's a time, simply speaking, that's more than 50% of teachers have intolerant views on religions of the others. And more than 50% they have radical view. Radical means that they have intention to act against those who have different belief system, who have different religious understanding or a different religion. Here we go, even like 41%, more than 41, have intention to engage in radical action when there is an opportunity to do so. This is the teachers. You can imagine the students, right? Okay, Setara Instruct, this is, you can just read yourself. This is our program. Okay, actually this program is really in line with our faculty. I'm from the Faculty of Islamic Theology and Philosophy at the State Islamic University in Indonesia in Yogyakarta, and our vision is to excel and leading in integrating and developing Usuluddin or Islamic sciences with modern sciences for civilization. Because of this for civilization, we are demanded to create something, to create change for the better of human being. And this is actually the connection with the cross-cultural religious literacy that we are working for so far with Pak Matius, with Laimina. And this is interesting because, we integrate the epistemology, the axiology, the praxis together to make it happen, and, integrating the knowledge, the theories, working on the area of the knowledge, the area of ethic and action. So it's like comprehensive way of doing things to make a change. And this is actually what's happening. And epistemology, actually, earlier, all the speakers already shared with you that we work on the source of knowledge about religion of the teachers. That's why the importance of having strong inclusive understanding of their own religion and blah, 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 blah. I think it's very clear because, all our friends already share with you about the CRCL. So I just try to frame it into philosophical way of thinking. Epistemology, okay, we work on the epistemological area, that we have to change the perspective, knowledge, increasing cross-cultural religious literacy from exclusive to inclusive, from low order of thinking to critical, and then from subjective to intersubjective, from working alone to collaboration. And then methodologically, okay, this is already shared by earlier, and axiology, because it's not only on the area of discourses on theoretical and epistemological things, but also developing norms of attitude of mutual respect, appreciation, and love. How we work on that? Create space, meetings, so we make them possible to talk each other. And we see the power of encounter, the power of, we call in Islam silaturahmi, we call perjumpaan in bahasa Indonesia. It's the same. This is actually the strongest thing that we see, a very effectual, determinative to make a change. Facilitating teachers who having experience of entering places of worship. For most of the teachers, it was the first time they enter the church. So they're like feeling, like very nervous, scared. But after they came into the church, they say, oh my goodness, it's just like the mosque. I feel the atmosphere of wisdom, silence, and stuff like that. And it's really changing the paradigm and also the changing their stereotype about others. This is actually the pictures of how it was, space of encounter. It's I don't know, funny but it's interesting because two friends, best friend, Catholic and Islam, and they talk each other. When you hurt me, so she told the friends the feeling that she has when the Christian friends hurt her, because he never think that someone from different religion will hold him, will hold her very tightly. Oh, I'm so nervous, so what do you call that, like very happy, something like that. And here, even like standing on the pulpit in the church, you can see it's very strong, symbol, right? That you can just even go there and then stand up, not only discuss, but it's like your home. Church is just like the mosque. It's like the place that you can just share your feeling with God, something like that. And here, learning from insiders, so you can see the practice, the action that they develop teaching plan. We give them like the lens, the very detail lens that they can just follow what they have to put into their teaching plan to make it happen into classroom, to make it possible for their student to experience, to share the knowledge, just like the teacher follow, the teacher experience, the teacher feel, something like that. So from teacher to student. So this is the successful stories, the last thing. The participant enthusiasm is very remarkable. More than 1,000 usually register in every single program. So you can imagine it's very effective. And a teacher execute their religious literacy integrated teaching plan in their classes. And the conclusion, this is actually developing inclusive epistemology, working comprehensively, integrating the fields of not only your thinking epistemologically, but axiologically, and also the praxis. This is actually the more effective way to do a changing comprehensively, not only knowledge, not only talking about theories, but ethic and action, collaboration, and just start it now, because everyone can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rohmaniyah. It just occurred to me that I'm with 5 elite, high-powered, very influential religious experts, and yet they all still must bow down before the master timer here. So, anyway, Mr. Knox Thames on pluralism and sacred sites.
Thank you. Well, I think first we should give a round of applause to Blythe, who's making all of the technology work in like real time. I had a boss once say, the devil is not in the details, the devil's in technology, but she's getting the devil out. So, well, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm just here for the day. I was actually happened to be in Honolulu this week to do a training for American Army chaplains who are stationed throughout the Indo-Pacific region, and I gave a lecture yesterday to about 100 of them about the importance of strategic religious engagement in their work, to engage religious actors on issues of religious freedom and being able to see the religious landscape in all these countries as a way to express American values of respect for diversity, pluralism, others. But my day today was free. I was thinking about going home, and Brett happened to email me and say, hey, can we talk? It's going to be hard to align our time zones because I'm in Hawaii. And I'm like, well, I'm in Hawaii. So I want to thank Brett for giving me the opportunity and squeezing me in today, because I really want to take advantage of this opportunity to share about the research I've been pursuing for the past couple of years, this new approach to promoting religious freedom in a way that is outside of the box of traditional human rights advocacy by engaging sacred places and using them as points of inclusion, not exclusion, to foster conversations about religion, diversity, pluralism, and respecting the beliefs of other people. So the way I define sacred sites promoting pluralism, it's a framework for promoting pluralism, diversity, and respect for others' beliefs through sacred sites in a locally acceptable, flexible, and sustainable way. We'll come back to this definition again later in my presentation. Just a bit about how my story, I came to this. I served for 20 years in the US government in different diplomatic capacities, focusing on religious freedom. During the Obama and Trump administrations, I was in a special envoy role focusing on religious minorities in the Middle East and South Asia. And a big focus was what ISIS had done to religious minorities in Iraq. And so I made several visits to northern Iraq to visit with the Yazidi community, the Christian community, the remnant of the Jewish community. And while we were working really hard to restore their physical needs, to meet their physical needs after the genocide, I realized there was a missing piece of the puzzle, an effort to restore their sacred places. That was a very important piece of connective tissue that would make northern Iraq feel like home for these communities that had suffered so bad and suffered so much. And so that started a series of just reflections and further meetings and discussions, which I talk about a little bit in my book. But I came away with 3 observed commonalities. First is that every community has a history of diversity of some kind. And that's incredibly true in Southeast Asia and Asia. Every community is grappling with how to live together in pluralistic societies. That is something the United States, Indonesia, China, every country is grappling with. And I believe that every community has sacred sites that can be used to promote pluralism if the people who venerate those sites have the right mentality and catch this vision. So the research, the way we're framing our problem statement is that at a time of increasing diversity and increasing intolerance, how can we foster interreligious peace and appreciation for religious pluralism? And our hypothesis is by leveraging the untapped potential of sacred sites to promote pluralism, diversity, and respect for different beliefs in a locally acceptable, flexible, and sustainable way. So, I come from the field of human rights diplomacy, but there's 3 fields at work in this space. Of course, human rights, religious freedom promotion, but there's also a very large community of heritage professionals. Think the national museums, UNESCO, that are committed to preserving sacred sites, not out of any religious mission, just because they recognize their importance to global heritage. Then also the interfaith promotion community, that they're looking at ways to have people from different beliefs and cultures and worldviews sit together that are often representing different sacred sites. And so we started to think about what if we combined these 3, and we believe that by doing so, there's an unexplored area in the center that fosters cooperation and mutually reinforcing activity between these 3 different siloed fields. And so the sacred sites promoting pluralism approach is interdisciplinary, we think synergistic, and it's also mutually reinforcing. And then at the end of the day, it's going to be more effective because you've got buy-in not just from one of these siloed lines of effort, but from all 3. So, I've written and talked about how I think diversity and managing diversity and learning to live together with each other is going to be the challenge of the 21st century because people and faiths are intermixing as never before. Groups that I would have had to read about and learn about when I was a kid in an encyclopedia, my high school boys will now learn about on Wikipedia. They're our neighbors. We're going to school with them, we're working with them. But we know that while that diversity can lead to great advances and synergies, fear of the religious other can also trigger division, hostility, and violence that impacts people and their places. We've seen these Pew Research Center graphics about just the global scope of faith communities. The dark blue is Asia Pacific, and in this region, everybody's here. Every faith community is represented, often in incredibly large numbers. Pew Research Center has also done some excellent data analysis on restrictions on the free practice of faith. And this won't surprise anyone in this room, the statistics are shockingly bad. They find that roughly 2 out of 3 people on earth live in environments that restrict the free practice of faith, that they're susceptible to persecution. They're not actively being persecuted, but they live in an environment with very narrow lanes of permissible religious activity, and if someone questions the lanes, wants to change lanes, leave the road altogether, they'll face prosecution by their government or persecution by their neighbors. And so we take these factors, 2 out of 3 people live in restrictive environments, with this other Pew data inset that 84% of the global community believes in God or higher power. So you have very high levels of restrictions with high levels of religious practice, and this is a recipe for instability, human rights violations, and destruction on a massive scale. And with heritage destruction, scholars have found that it is often a precursor to genocide. Dr. Patty Gersonbleeth, she testified before Congress about how the experiences of the Holocaust have shown us that when governments or organizations wish to wipe out a community, the destruction of their sacred sites is always part of that plan. And we've seen that in the Middle East with the ISIS attacks in Iraq, destroying churches, but also ancient Roman pavilions. But it's not just terrorists that do that. Russia, the statistic's even a little dated now, but they have purposely targeted Ukrainian heritage sites, including religious sites, as an attempt to erase Ukraine's identity. So we have these declarations on interfaith relations, religious freedom, and heritage protection that have established important norms, but they've been created in parallel, disconnected from what I think are interconnected problems. So we all know about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that the drafting committee was chaired by, this is the picture of Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of, at that point, the late President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The UDHR led 20 years later to the passage of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And you'll see in Article 18, it doesn't talk about heritage, but it talks about the importance of places where people can gather for worship, observance, practice, and teaching. And also about the importance of religious minorities having places to practice their faith. On the heritage side, the Hague Convention that protects heritage sites in times of armed conflict, does identify religious sites as part of cultural sites that need to be protected. And then we have the World Heritage Convention from UNESCO. It doesn't speak specifically to religious sites in its definition of heritage, but the World Heritage List, roughly about 20% of them are religious in nature. So in practice, they recognize that religious sites are part of culture and are worthy of protection. We also see statements like Fratelli Tutti, the Marrakesh Declaration, and others looking to find a scriptural justification to promote peaceful coexistence through religious traditions. These statements are clear, but they're clearly not enough because the challenge of persecution, I like to say there's a pandemic of persecution that's impacting every community somewhere. And so we need to find a new way forward to shift from these sort of isolated, we just do religious freedom, we just do cultural heritage prevention, to do something that's networked and proactive. And this is where the sacred sites promoting pluralism approach is what we're trying to develop as a concept. So again, here's the definition. Sacred sites promoting pluralism is a framework for promoting pluralism, diversity, and respect for others' beliefs through sacred sites in a locally acceptable, flexible, and sustainable way. So we have these three fields that are parallel, that they rarely interact. Cultural heritage protection looks to protect, preserve, and restore sacred sites for future generations. The human rights work of freedom of religion or belief wants to ensure individuals enjoy freedom of belief and worship at sacred sites. And interfaith efforts want to foster understanding and cooperation between different religions and beliefs. But again, we think there's this unexplored area between all three of these fields that foster this cooperation and mutually reinforcing activity that is going to be ultimately more effective. So you're probably wondering, well, what does he mean by sacred sites? It's a great question. Well, of course, there are the cultural heritage sites, places that connect us to our past, but they also can be contemporary places of worship, pilgrimage or gathering. They can represent past or current civilizations and cultures, but the key part is that they have a connection to the divine. It's something holy, something sacred. It's not the gymnasium, it's something more than that. And then what do we mean by pluralism? Well, the definition in the English dictionary says pluralism is a state of society in which members of diverse ethnic, racial, religious, or social groups maintain and develop their tradition or culture within the confines of a common civilization. And this is contrasted against tolerance, which, while an important virtue and one which I think we hope more countries will start to adopt, it's sort of negative in presentation, the capacity to endure pain or hardship, to indulge others for their beliefs or practices. Diana Eck from Harvard has a great four-part definition of pluralism. First, it's not diversity alone, but the energetic engagement with diversity. Second, pluralism is not just tolerance, but the active seeking of understanding across lines of difference. Thirdly, pluralism is not relativism, but the encounter of commitments, and pluralism is based on dialogue. This mirrors this concept of covenantal pluralism developed by the Templeton Religion Trust, which is the foundation that's funding this research for me. They talk about a pluralism that offers a holistic vision of citizenship that emphasizes both legal equality and neighborly solidarity, a non-relativistic paradigm for living together peacefully and productively in the context of our deepest differences. So pluralism is acknowledging we have different truth claims, different views of the divine, and we're agreeing to disagree about those things, but do so agreeably. But we walk together arm in arm in support of each other's rights to hold those beliefs. I want to skip this slide just for time. So we have these three different areas of work. We have, for religious freedom to have long-term success, this is where the synergies come together. It requires education about different beliefs and individual rights in the community. For cultural heritage preservation, long-term success requires local buy-in, especially if these sites represent minority faiths. And for interfaith work, long-term success requires acceptance of pluralistic societies and tolerance of others. We see this sacred sites promoting pluralism approach as sort of a keystone that would be welcomed and support the efforts of all three of these fields of work. The sacred sites promoting pluralism approach provides a local narrative that supports cultural heritage preservation, religious freedom, and interfaith efforts. It promotes community buy-in of heritage sites. It promotes understanding of different beliefs in a community. It promotes acceptance of historic and modern diversity. It also reminds communities of their pluralistic past by emphasizing learning from their stories of diversity, both the good and the bad. I mean, as we know, especially in Asia, history is layered, it's complicated, but these stories provide opportunities to ask questions about how we live together today in diversity. Now, this new approach is not going to solve everything. There are no silver bullets, but we think it's a customizable approach that emphasizes local histories to address contemporary problems by using their stories. So it doesn't point or lecture, it listens. And as a former diplomat representing the United States, I would come into a meeting carrying the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and it would be somewhat adversarial. I'd be urging a country to let people out of jail or reform their laws, and that's an important thing to do, and I want us to keep doing it. But if we're going to have long-term success, we've got to convince people at the neighborhood level to live with those who think and believe something different. And so this approach is not lecturing, it's using their stories of diversity to listen and to learn. And this flexibility is going to provide, I think, greater impact, durability, and longevity. I've said it's the missing piece of the puzzle to a lot of human rights efforts. It'll complement other efforts, especially for these three fields. And there's a variety of puzzle pieces. You could use this approach to train religious groups on heritage preservation with experts from other communities. We tried this in Iraq with great success, bringing religious minorities together for training with Muslim scholars. We can use sacred sites to convene diverse groups together to understand more about their community. I think what Lamina is doing in Indonesia is a really important sort of proof of concept of seeing these students visit each other's place, and the sacred sites provides that catalyst for conversation, and using it as an educational tool. These, especially ancient heritage sites, they're a monument to a past diversity. They're evidence that people of different cultures and beliefs lived here long ago, and it offers opportunities to ask questions about what does that mean for us today. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I think this approach has great applicability to Southeast Asia. So I welcome future conversations. I'm sorry I won't be able to stay longer, but I welcome by email communication, discussions about how this might work in your context. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Knox. I just want to add with regard to Knox's presentation because in recent days, the International Criminal Court has been quite important for the Philippines. I'm not going to go into the details of that one. But the ICC has apparently given a ruling before in 2016, judging a person as having committed a war crime for destroying heritage sites or sacred sites. And this happened in the case of Ahmad Al-Faqih Al-Mahdi in 2016, there in Timbuktu, destroying 10 sites, 9 of them being part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So anyway, do we have time for questions to be given? No more. Unfortunately, apologies. So, yes. Well, I'll just close off the today's panel, and it's been a great panel so far. But please give me the opportunity to at least discuss this certain thing that I'd like to make mention of. And this is the basis of natural law as a basis for a pluralistic society, which we have not been able to discuss so far. For under my belief, natural law is afforded to everyone the same rights, the rights to live, the right to happiness, and of course, with regard to many of our laws, business, politics, and human rights agendas. Even an agonistic pluralist theory can provide a way of intellectually justifying an Augustinian Thomist natural law approach to public discourse. That is, agonism's critique of the concept of public reason creates space for political argumentation rooted in the natural law account. There is also, of course, Robert George's 5 pillars of a decent and dynamic society, which I invite everyone to examine, involving respect for human dignity, the traditional family, law and order, research and education, and business firms. I'd like to give a short word on tolerance, which has been I think, a common word mentioned this morning. The root meaning of the word tolerance suggests what the virtue involves. The Latin tol is related to a group of words having to do with carrying a burden. German dulden, to be patient, to endure. The Old English tholian, to suffer. The Latin tuli, I have borne. So when we tolerate, we bear with someone or something. We bear the existence of a wrong, and we do so because, given the circumstances, to protest will invite a greater wrong. There's a time for public correction and a time for quiet endurance, and if the opportunity provides, private correction. In any event, we do have to acknowledge the fact that fate does have a role to play in our society. Even more importantly, we have to acknowledge and insist that fate must be accompanied by reason. Rather, therefore, than simply referring to inclusion, we must insist that matters of faith are to be reasonable. And with that, the role that religion has in the public sphere, in legislation and judicial rulings, become entirely justified, appropriate, and reasonable. And with that, thank you very much all for this afternoon.